Hello, you guys, Luxura Moon Goddess. And today we will be discussing confidence is just George Michael energy. Yes, and I've got my baby I'm a star sunglasses on because I thought it would be just perfect for this video. So, let's get into it. So, if we really think about it, if you are familiar with the singer George Michael, confidence is really just George Michael energy. So, what do we know about George Michael? If you've seen George Michael in the way that he does his music videos, I can tell just by in his music videos, the way he sings, the energy that he puts out in his music, in his songs, in what he's doing. George Michael was very confident. He was very confident, and there's no one that can really argue with that. He was, even with, with some of the things that were going on with him, because especially the press, they would always go after him about his sexuality. They did that for, several years. But with that being said, that did not stop him from being very successful. So, when we think of confidence, just think George Michael energy. So, how can you feel confident? Like George Michael and really any type of celebrity that you may really like, that you love, celebrities are most of them are really confident. You have to believe in yourself. You have to rate it on the highest frequency, knowing that you are the best. Even think about it this way. I'm going to give you this for example. You should be able to feel confident in yourself, especially in this day and age. You have people, for example, especially if you are very attractive, very talented. I'll use the analogy or the example of being attractive. How is it that you've seen people, particularly men, that are not attractive? It's like unattractive people have the highest self-esteem, and some of them, I'm going to say, they're like, some of them are just delusional because, it's like they're delusional, but they don't care. You have to exude that energy. It's kind of like that. It's like they walk around, I am the best. And, and especially another example is like with men. Men have very large egos. A lot of them. They think they are the best. They think, I am the best. I am legend. Nobody can compare to me. That is the energy that you need to give. It's like, give off that celebrity energy. Even if you don't like George Michael, I'm just using George Michael for example because I do like me some George Michael. But it can be, emulate a celebrity that you really truly love. For example, another way so that you can feel confident. Think about it this way. If someone's not looking as good as you, they can't tell you anything. If they're not paying your bills, they can't tell you anything. These are examples, ways of thinking, so that you can be confident in yourself. And when you have this confidence, when you gain this level of confidence, nobody's going to tell you anything. Nobody's going to tell you anything because it's like, you know what? I am the best. I am very beautiful. I am, this, that, and the other, and no one can compare to me because I am the greatest. That is the energy that you need to give. So, back to the topic of, since I'm using the example of George Michael. So, with George Michael, you couldn't tell him anything. You cannot tell me that George Michael was not truly someone who was confident. He knew, and he was one of the greatest singers and songwriters, in history. And so, with that being said, if you notice, and I wish I could put in clips of, like, for example, some of his music videos and stuff, but anyway, the way he moves, he was confident in himself. His dance moves, his style. he was not afraid to show himself, to express himself through his music, through his songs. And a part of that, and if you really think about it, a part of how he became successful is likely, of course, is his confidence. Even though people, again, the press attacked him for his sexuality, for many years, and he always got questioned by it, and, this, that, and the other. It didn't stop him from being, the greatest. And he had to know, and I think on some level, even though he was very confident and successful, I think with George Michael, compared to a lot of celebrities and especially singers today, he was, if you notice, with him in some of his interviews, I think on some level he was kind of more, I'll say modest. But, with what we know with him now, he was undisputably one of the greatest singers and songwriters that ever existed. Not even just because he was a British artist, in Europe. He was popular across, multiple countries, and especially even in the US. So with that being said, he maintained this confidence no matter what the press said, no matter what they put out there. People are going to, if you think of the mindset of a celebrity, people are going to talk about you. They're going to talk about you. They're going to say, they may say positive things, and then they're going to say negative things. But that's not going to let you deter your confidence. And you want to know why that is? Really, with the celebrity mindset, think about it this way. Any publicity is good publicity, even if they're saying something negative, even if they're spreading rumors, and you want to know why that is, you have to stop and think. They're talking about you. So when somebody, especially if they're, somebody who's jealous of you, who's envious of you, and they're talking bad about you, the thing is with that, they're thinking about you. They're thinking about you. You're not even thinking about them. You could care less about them. You have more important things to really think about other than them. And yet they're sitting, oh well, she's always dressed up, she's always, spending money on clothes, and look at her, she's I don't know what her problem is, and she thinks she's so great, and they're always gonna be talking. They're gonna be talking, especially if you're younger, you're in high school or whatever. Especially if you're in high school, it's just the nature of the beast. But even when you become adults, even when you become older, especially in the workplace, depending on where you're working, especially if you're working in retail, they're going to be talking about you. You're going to have people talking about you, hating on you, being jealous of you. Don't let that deter your confidence, because you're the one who has the power. You are the one that has the power. They're going to be talking about you, but it doesn't matter, because you have the power. Because again, you're not thinking about them. It's like, you know what? This is the mindset you have to have when they're talking bad about you. It's like, you know what? Thank you so much for thinking of me. Thank you so much for thinking of me. Because it's like, you could be thinking about someone more important, like a celebrity, your mom, like your friend, but you sat in your mind and you're consciously thinking about me. Why, thank you, darling. That's the mindset you have to have with that. Especially, that's just the mindset you have to have. Just don't care. Just don't care. So, another example, George Michael Energy. So let's get back on the topic of George Michael Energy. With that being said, George Michael was making money. Even if you're not, if somebody, they couldn't tell him anything, the people who hated him, and there was, even though he was popular, even though, especially, from what I've heard, he actually donated a lot of money to charities in secrecy. No, he was a generally good person. It's no wonder why he had people hating on him and this, that, and the other. But with that being said, back to what I was saying. When you're staying paid, even if you're not rich like George Michael, if they're not paying your bills, their opinion should not really matter to you. It just shouldn't matter. They're not paying your bills. They're not buying your clothes. They're not buying your jewelry. So you have to really stop and think. Especially if, because again, They don't know better than you. They don't really know who you are as a person. They just know you on a superficial level. They can't tell you anything. If they're not paying your bills, they're not offering any money to pay your bills or what have you, they can't say anything to affect your level of confidence or your self-esteem. It's meaningless. They don't pay your bills. Who cares what they think of you? That is the level of confidence you have to have, especially in the world today. In the world today, this is the type of confidence that you have to have and really keep, especially, as you get older in life. hmm So, what other ways, since we're talking about confidence and staying confident and keeping confidence, and we're focusing on George Michael, what else do we know about George Michael? George Michael was attractive. He was attractive. Maybe not to everyone, but you can't tell me that he was not an attractive man. From especially in the 80s when he had, that hairstyle that he had, and, he was physically fit. He was very attractive, as a man. He was very attractive. So, maintain, it is helpful, and we know, especially as women, the power of pretty privilege. Please maintain your beauty. I don't really care for the cliche statement, oh, looks fade, beauty doesn't last forever. No, 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 no. It's not going to stop me from maintaining my beauty as long as I can. So if you want to maintain George Michael energy, look your best. Dress your best. And especially because some people, even if they're going to talk bad about you or think bad things about you, sometimes when you just look really good, like you look too good to be true, even though they're thinking something bad about you up here and they're jealous of you, they may not even be bold enough. They won't even have the guts to say anything to you. They won't say anything to you. They'll just be a hater and be, two-faced and, oh, you look good. And they may talk bad about you to someone else, but who cares? Because it's like, you know what? Of course I look good. I'm in my outfit on. I'm looking my best. I got my sunglasses on. I'm looking my best. They can't tell you anything. So that is a part of George Michael energy. Maintain your attractiveness. It's going to be very hard for people to truly hate you or truly come at you when you're always looking your best. So, look your best. So, another thing, what else do we know about confidence and George Michael energy? You have to believe in yourself. You just have to believe in yourself. Just believe that you're going to be successful. And at some point in one of the interviews I was watching, he knew, especially when he was in, the group Wham, that it was going to take off and that he would be popular. You have to really believe in yourself. Don't let nobody tell you that, you can't do this, you can't do that, da 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 da. You want to know why they're saying, oh, you can't do this, you're not going to be anything, and they're saying these negative things to you? It's because especially when it comes from, older folks, they're just mad that they can't do it themselves. They can't be you. Let me repeat that for the people in the back. They can't be you. They can't be you. They can't do it like you. They can't do it as good as you. It is what it is. And they're going, and people are going to be upset. They're going to be upset. Especially when you are radiating confidence and you're on a very high frequency. Oh yes, people are going to be triggered. They're going to be very triggered because you are radiating confidence. You're walking in confidence. You're feeling yourself. If you've lost the weight, or you're dressed your best, or you've gotten past your traumas, or what have you. Oh yes, when you're radiating on a high frequency, it's going to trigger people because they don't have that confidence that you have. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, with that being said, that is, people are going to stay triggered by you, but you don't let it affect you. You have to get your confidence and do what it is that you need to do to have your confidence. Is it, and some people talk about, oh, it shouldn't be focusing on the superficial. You shouldn't be so focusing on superficial things like clothes, hair. Sometimes, especially, and I've learned this, from personal experience. When you don't really have high self esteem or you don't really believe in yourself, even though we shouldn't heavily focus on the superficial, sometimes it does just take what you wear. Maybe it is a piece of jewelry, or maybe some cute sunglasses, or maybe a cute hairstyle, something that can raise your frequency. Something that can raise your frequency so that you do feel good. And when you do start feeling good about yourself because you have a nice outfit on, or you have some sunshades on, or you got your nails did, sometimes it's what's needed to give you a confidence boost that you need. Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to feel confident. Don't let that deter you. Don't let people say, oh, well, you're fake, well, you need this, that, and the other. It doesn't matter. You have to do what you need to do to feel good about yourself. And I'm sure, especially with George Michael, when he was younger, he had to do, whether it's something, and especially, I just said, the physical, something that you wear, or even something you have to do mentally. Because especially if you're becoming a celebrity, when you become a celebrity, people are going to be coming at you left and right. So you have to have high self-esteem. You have to be confident in yourself. You have to believe in yourself, regardless of what people think. Do what it is that you need to do. What you need to do. It's whatever you need to do. Not what your mama says you need to do. Not what your cousin, suggests. Because what they may do to raise their confidence, they may give advice. And it may be well intentioned. But it just may not work for you. So what is it so that you can get into that George Michael energy? Do you need to, perfume, hair, nails, and outfit, changing your mindset, getting your mental? Oh, yes, you have to get your mental right. You have to get your mental right. You can't be thinking, oh, well, I don't like the sound of my voice, or, I don't think I'm really good at this, that, and the other. I'm overweight, I'm not able to lose weight, and, you can't focus on your insecurities. And even when it comes to insecurities, especially, and, probably George Michael and other celebrities, of course, they probably had insecurities. But do they really sit and dwell on them every single day? Or did they say, you know what? I have these flaws. I have these insecurities. How can I turn them into strengths? Or how can I use them to my advantage? That's the mental you have to get into. Don't just see it as flaws or insecurities that you can't do anything about. Know that you have the power to do something. You have the power to do something. You have the power to change certain things about yourself. Some things may be more difficult than others, but don't let that stop you. If you really want to change something about yourself, you have to know in your mind, you have the ability to improve. You have the ability to change yourself and to become better than what you are right at the present moment. Yes. So, with that being said, believe in yourself. Do what you need to do so that you can radiate confidence. Get into this George Michael energy, and get into this George Michael energy. You have to, and I use George Michael again. That's just I like some George Michael. Not gonna lie, I like some George Michael. And that's just the example that I chose to use. But it can be, for example, if you don't like George Michael or you don't care about George Michael, maybe try another celebrity. What celebrity, because sometimes, and it's not that you have to necessarily fully copy someone or be exactly like that celebrity or that person, but in your mind, is there somebody who you would like to emulate? Is there somebody who has the level of confidence that you would like? It may not be George Michael. It may be, it may be Michael Jackson. It may be Nicki Minaj. It may be, Britney Spears, J Lo, it's whoever. Doja Cat, whoever you have to really emulate. Stop and think. Okay, is there a celebrity or is there a person with the level of confidence that I would like to have? Who is this person? Or even if it's not a celebrity, but I feel like celebrities are good examples because they're like at the highest of society, and that's really the level of confidence you have to have. So, who is that person? And then you take it a step further. What traits do you like about that celebrity? Is it personality traits? Is it that they're bold? Is it that they're very well spoken? If you've seen interviews of, because I've been watching a lot of George Michael interviews, George Michael was very well spoken. I like that about him. I like that quality. And I would like to, even though, I'm very confident in myself, if I do say so myself, I want to be very well spoken like him. Is this, with that being said, what else is it about the celebrity that you like? Well spoken. Is it that they dress nice? Do you want to be physically fit like them? Do you want to be as beautiful as them? Do you want to be, as creative as them? What is it? Think about those traits that really resonate with you and stop and think and ask yourself, how can I incorporate this within myself? How can I be creative like George Michael? Or how can I be very outspoken like George Michael? Ask yourself, use that with whatever celebrity that you love. And do this. And then figure out how you can incorporate those traits within yourself. Because sometimes it does take another person that you have to admire or look up to. Even if they're not necessarily a role model, because especially growing up in school, they say, oh, have a role model, a role model. I never really had a role model growing up, if I'm being honest. But I do like me some George Michael, I'll say that again. And I could emulate some George Michael if I really felt like it. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, who do you really need to look up to? It's whoever it is. It can be a celebrity, recent celebrities from the 90s, 80s, hell, 1800s, any celebrity that you can research and, whoever it is that you admire. Emulate it. Just emulate it. If you emulate it, because a lot of people, and I've had this from personal experience, they usually don't like something about their personality. For example, when I was younger, I was more shy. I was more timid. I was just like that. And I was like that for quite a while, up until I want to say within my early adulthood, early 20s. And so, with that being said, if you don't like something about your personality, again, know that you can reprogram your mind. You can reprogram your mind so that you can change your personality. And again, admire somebody. Who is somebody that you could emulate? Talk, and again, it's not per se about copying or becoming them, but sometimes you just have to emulate. You just have to emulate. Talk like them. Walk like them. You can even make it, like they say, I think they call it, role playing. Just do it for fun. You can sit in a mirror and you can, just for fun, do it for fun. Do it for a while. You know what, I'm going to talk like George Michael. I'm going to emulate George Michael. Yes, I'm outspoken. Or, if it's Beyonce, yes, I'm like Beyonce. Yes, how you doing? Whatever it is, however you're going to act. Just do it for fun. And sometimes when you're just doing it for fun, again, doing something like this can raise your frequency. It makes you feel better. It boosts your mood. So you're doing that, role playing or acting like this celebrity or, acting out George Michael energy. And then it's like, oh, this is fun. Or, oh, you may even surprise yourself. It's like, oh, I can be outspoken like George Michael. Or, oh, I can, do dance moves like George Michael, or whoever. And it's like, oh, you know what, this wasn't as difficult as I thought. Or, oh, I didn't know I had it within me. And you may just surprise yourself from emulating the traits of that person. So, with that being said, do what you need to do to maintain and gain your own George Michael energy. So, with that being said, that is all I have for this one, and I will check you later in the next one. Bye bye.